Good morning. Well, continuing my thoughts from yesterday, I was looking, as I said, in chapter 45 of Isaiah and seeing there in the revised version of the Bible, which I read, that God had created a world in which man could in fact live. But then I said in Genesis, it said, the earth was a formless void. And we wondered whether there was in fact a gap in which we might be able to understand where evil had come from. Because God, having created the heavens and the earth, and created this great archangel, the firstborn angel, the great seraph himself, who stood in the presence of God, he had been given all this authority to govern the heavens and the earth. And yet somehow he had risen up against God in rebellion and said, I am going to be like the Most High. I am going to take over. And what is more, I'm going to get all the angels of God to come and worship me. We're told from Revelation, a third of them actually did. But we're also told that this archangel had been given authority over the earth as well, over the whole of the material universe. And so he decides he was going to use this universe as well. But he wasn't going to allow God to put into this other universe beings who might one day compete with him. And so he had deliberately set about to destroy this part of God's creation. So when we come to the Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, we see that the world is a formless void. Now God, having spoken the words of creation and brought all of his creation into being, he says, this is good. What I have created is good. And then it comes and he says, on the seventh day, God rested from all that he had created. Adam and Eve, they're in the garden, caring for creation on behalf of God, gradually transforming the garden and extending the garden until it should actually occupy the whole of the earth. And in that garden, suddenly there comes this strange being again, this being who has been in rebellion to God. Now, once again, you see, having thought about what I thought about yesterday, I began to look again at this being who came in. Why was Eve deceived by him? What was it about him that caused her to become confused in this particular way? And as I read chapter 3 of Genesis, it says quite simply that the Nachash was the craftiest of all the beings that God had created. The Nachash, in fact, Genesis calls him the Nachash. And as we look at our English translations, we are told the name is given Serpent. In fact, if you look throughout the whole of Scriptures, you find the name appearing over and over again, Nachash, meaning serpent. But then you suddenly look into Ezekiel, and you find that the same word is used, meaning morning star, or bright one, or shining one, the great light bearer himself. Then, in fact, the word should not in fact be translated as serpent, but the Nachash, the shining one, the great one, came into the garden. And Eve sees him there. Here is the greatest of all God's creations. She must be overawed by him. And it is he who, trying to destroy what God is doing again, having rebelled against him once and destroyed his material creation, this Nachash now tries to get her to turn against God again. And we know the story of the temptation and how Eve took of the fruit of the tree of good and evil and gave some to her husband. And sin came into the world. And with that sin coming into the world, Adam and Eve themselves lose the ability to shine forth the light of God. They suddenly realize they're naked. Until this moment, they were surrounded by light. Light came from their innermost being. But now they realize they're naked. And God comes to them and says, what have you done? Have you eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which I told you not to eat? Ah, yes, says Adam. My wife gave me the fruit and I ate it. So God turns to Eve and he says to her, why did you do this? And she says, the Nachash. He told me if I ate it, I would become wise. And I fell for his lie. And then God turns to him and says, because you have done this, then you will go on your belly, and dust you will eat all the days of your life. Because I will not allow you to destroy this part of my creation. you have gone against me now. The battle will be drawn. The battle lines will be drawn. And here in this world, we have to realize that you and I, well, we are almost like pawns in this great battle. God has a purpose. He wants to bring mankind, you and me, to perfection. He wants to allow us to become his children and to be established as his kingdom, as his children, to be part of his family. You see, part of his family is something that Nachash could never be, because he was a creature. But now we are told man himself is going to be part of the very family of God. So that Nachash obviously wants to destroy it. And in this battle, he is fighting God still, trying to turn man against God, trying to destroy the relationship between man and God. And the battle is so great that God himself has to enter into the battle and, dying on the cross, destroy once and for all the power of the Nachash to do this. So as you see, as you read scriptures, I'm dealing with the book of the prophet Isaiah, and suddenly I'm jumping back and forth from Genesis to Isaiah to Ezekiel and back again, looking at it in different interpretations to try to show you what's happening. Amen.